Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal Bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Mr. Ramakrishnan, who's the promoter and non-executive director, and Mr. Shanbag, promoter and non-ED, joining us on the show. Welcome to the show, gentlemen, and it's a great pleasure to celebrate this great opportunity with you as well, with the number of years that you've completed in terms of business at Galaxy Surfactants. Let me start off with Mr. Ramakrishnan. Mr. Ramakrishnan, if you can help us understand, when did the idea of Galaxy first come to you and how did it all start?
Hiral, thank you very much. And first and foremost, I'm extremely sorry to the participants for having delayed. This is one of the additional challenges in my life I have faced as an entrepreneur today. So this is the latest. All right, Hiral, to answer your question, I have done 150 road shows during our IPO time. I have participated and championed them. In all the road shows, I would start with my favorite quote from Saint Augustine about faith. Faith is that which makes you believe in what you do not yet see and makes you finally see what you believe in. Okay, and it was in the year was 1978. 15 days into Colgate Palmolive that I was as a management trainee, a thought passed through my mind that if I am on my own, I'll be 5 times more creative. And don't ask me for the match, but that was the thought. So I straight walked up to Shashi Shanbag. Shashi is here, and both of us were around 23, something like that. And out of 72 of us who were interviewed, two of us landed up with Colgate Palmolive as a management training. So I went to Shashi and I said that, look, Shashi, life has kept us together for 8 years. We come in Podar and thereafter same firm for our CA and Hindustan Liver Industrial Training. So let's do something together. He said, Sosta home. Next day we went for a movie in Regal. While coming down, I asked him, Socha kya? He said, Jira will not participate as chartered accountants. We cannot multiply by employing people under us. Let's put up an industry. You can imagine two young chartered accountants, not schooled in any business, no technology, nothing. And I said, let's put up an industry. But then what happens is when you have a prepared mind, the universe cooperates. One of our friends, Kulas, he brought C.R. Ramakrishna, U. Shekhar. So four of us, we constituted at that time. And during those times, that one particular year, I always used to feel that I'm going to meet somebody and he is going to guide me into the line of business that I should go into. So anybody and everybody whom I would meet where I deeply feel that this man is going to guide, I would indulge into some dialogue discussion with them. So during one of our manufacturing conference session, I went and sat next to Mr. Warrior, the then manufacturing director at Colgate Palmolive. I said that, Mr. Warrior, I have a young bright friend, a chemical engineer and an MBA from IIM Calcutta, that was Shekhar. And I said that you are the right man whom Shekhar should meet. And Mr. Warrior said, yeah, bring him along this Sunday, 10 a.m. So I took Shekhar there. And so Mr. Warrior asked Shekhar, young man, which department do you want to work in? Quality or manufacturing? Shekhar said, no, sir, I've come here for a different purpose. I want to become an entrepreneur and I want an advice from you as to whether you have any suggestion for me. He asked Shekhar, what does your father do? Shekhar said he hires air conditioners. So Mr. Warrior could make out that this man doesn't have much money. And neither could I tell Mr. Warrior that I am wanting to partner with Shekhar because I was working there. So Mr. Warrior told Shekhar, look, gentlemen, why don't you consider this product called SLES? This goes into shampoos. I buy 2 metric tons per month and it doesn't even require a boiler. In a small shed, you could manufacture this SLES.
Hmm.
And Shekhar said, yes, let me think over it. I will come back. So we climbed down the stairs, 1 foot onto the road and another inside Colgate. Yeah, Shekhar, hey, Shekhar, what is this SLES? What do we do? And of course, in Tamil, there is a word called Vedavake, which means from the mouth of God. So Shekhar then said he will come back, and he brought in Sudhir Patil, another chemical engineer who studied along with him in UDCT. And so the group of 5 got formed, and we made some laboratory batches. It passed, and well, yes, here we are today. And that SLES suggestion from Mr. Warrior today, we do around 1,000 crores of that SLES, you see. So, so it's all faith, and the universe cooperates. Faith is that which makes you believe in what you do not yet see, and finally makes you see what you believed in. So this, in summary, is some detail about the story.
And that's an interesting story as well, Mr. Ramakrishnan. Mr. Shanbag, for you as well.
I can't hear.
Mr. Shanbag, for you as well, relationships with stakeholders have actually played a pivotal role.
I can't hear nothing.
You can hear now?
Yeah, I can hear now.
Yeah. Mr. Ramakrishnan, I was saying that was an interesting part of the journey and how you started. Let me go to Mr. Shanbag. Mr. Shanbag, the relationships with stakeholders have played a pivotal role. What's the importance of these relationships, and how do you think has it influenced and impacted you as a company in the last 41 years?
So before I talk about relationship, let me first communicate to our colleagues who will be listening to us, as well as some of the shareholders or potential business associates, that Shekhar, our CEO, could not join today because his father passed away 2 days back. Shekhar's father was one of the investors as well as a guide for us. So it's certainly something I would like to acknowledge in this forum. Apart from that, being our foundation day, I would like to thank all our members of the board, the employees, the vendors, the customers, the government officials, who some way or the other have been helping us during this course of 41 years. Coming back to your question on relationship, we are into B2B business, and in B2B business, relationship is extremely critical. If you see our business, like in stock exchange, the strength of the relationship is the moat for our business. And when it comes to business, it is not just relationship between a salesperson in Galaxy and a buyer in customer organization. It goes much, much beyond. It's relationship at various levels of customer organization as well as vendor organization. It's relating with the production department of the customers and vendors. It's relationship with quality assurance and research and development divisions of the customers, with the warehousing team, the finance team, and the ultimate sign of deep relationship is where we relate with the marketing department of the organization, where they come to know the strength of Galaxy as a vendor or as a partner, and they can think beyond what they are doing currently, and they can always come back to us when they have a different thought. Now, how do you build this relationship, really strengthen this relationship? It depends on not only meeting customer needs, but meeting the quality requirements on time, their service requirements of time. There have been occasions, okay, some of our customers had something like 28 plants all over India. And we used to supply them just in time in these 28 plants without a single default. And for us and many of our customers, understanding is the customers' factories or plants will not close even for 1 hour. And this is not only in India. Today, we have that kind of relationship with our global customers, where if required, if there is a port strike, if there is any problem anywhere, we even air freight our material at our cost to ensure that their plants are not affected. We know in the long run, this is what will build our relationship with the customers, and the business will grow. If you ask me what is the ultimate result of this, we today have more than 1,700 customers globally. We service something like 114 countries, out of them 80 countries absolutely regularly. So that is the strength of the relationship that we are talking about.
Right. And with this,
Any question? Yeah.
yeah, and with this strength as well overall, if you see the kind of growth that we've achieved, it's taken 36 years for the company to touch 100 crores in terms of profitability. In the next 6 years, we touched 200 crores. And then it's just been a journey of 1 year where you reach from 200 to 300 crores. Could you, describe to us how are the changes, the strategy that we used to drive our journey from 100 to 300 crores, Mr. Shanbhag?
It looks fantastic, is it not?
Absolutely.
36 years for 100 crores and next 4 years for another 100 crores and just 1 year for next 100 crores. I think that's what you will see in many of the organizations and many countries also. When you create the base, it takes a hell of a lot of time to create the strength of the organization. So what we have done over, say, period of first almost 25 years, if you really look at, we started in 1980, our major plan for export happened in 2005. So it was 25 years for us to create a base in India first, okay? Base to service world from India. Then next 10 years was time of creating plant in Egypt, plant in USA, and then expanding further in, say, Jagadia over next year. So we created the base for manufacturing volumes first. Okay, simultaneously, quite a bit of money was invested in innovation. We came with a lot of products in absolutely environment-friendly products, in preservative area, in sun care area, and we have a lot of unique products there, and these are the products which have started contributing. So today, our, say, specialty chemicals contribute to almost something like 35-36% of business. Maybe if you look at 2005, perhaps it may be negligible. And in 2005, we were talking about a goal of 25% of business coming from export. Today, 65% business comes from international business. So we look at the various factors which have started contributing to bottom line. One is the international business being moved from something like nothing to 65% today. Having factories in Egypt, then new very big facilities at Jagadia. Similarly, a plant in USA. Tremendous investment in innovation and having our unique products competing with the best in the world. We have products where we can say we are as good as the others, maybe sometimes in some products better than the best in the world. And then today, the relationship is not between a buyer and seller. It's a partnership relationship. Many of our global customers, as well as Indian customers, tell us what they are thinking of doing, and they ask us whether we can contribute to their products. And that's what we have been doing. And this has also contributed to profitability. Obviously, you will understand that specialty chemicals, the profitability is much higher. With performance product, it's quite a bit of bread and a little bit of butter. And in specialty chemicals, it's a lot of profitability that's added. And that's how we have grown this way in last 41 years.
Okay. So Mr. Ramakrishnan, coming to you, being a CA, you yet take up the mantle of business development head. Usually an entrepreneur looks at opportunities and not limitations. What made you take this, and why do you think was it critical?
Kewal, first and foremost, let me tell you that I make a huge, for me, there is a huge difference between academics and education. My true education started after my academics. I happened to do my chartered accountancy, cost accountancy, company secretary, etc. But then my entire education has happened in the School of Business of Galaxy. And even today, I am like a small child, you see. I am so curious about anything and everything. I don't know how anybody can say I like maths, I don't like physics, I like chemistry, I like geography, etc. I seem to be liking just about anything and everything in the world. Okay, so chartered accountancy happened to be just some academic qualification that I landed up with, but my true education is in chemistry. I would say human chemistry. Okay, so I knew that one of the main pillars for the organization is business development and reading, talking to anybody and everybody, understanding the science behind organic chemistry, the science behind application development, then a way to say pierce the heart of the buyer, because as Shashi said, it's all about relationship. I realized that in a product called SLS. Now I had to go make the presentations in their R&D center to the scientist, to their purchase guy, to their commercial person, all over the world, you see. So I knew that I have to appeal to the logic of the person's head and emotionally to the person's heart. Two things being equal, finally they decide with their heart, you see, in terms of voting for which they should go for. So over time, I mastered the science of human chemistry, and my curiosity, which even now is childlike, ability to grasp, read, understand, never think anything is a matter of challenge, made me one of the good candidates for business development.
Right. So overall, Mr. Shanbag, you handle people before
I
you
can't hear
decide.
again. Hello. Hello,
Yes,
Natarajan?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So coming back to Mr. Shanbag, you handled people before you decided to retire. How critical is business development and succession for continuity of business?
Let me first clarify, I did not retire really. I call it stepping aside. That's what I wrote to my colleagues. What happened was one of the critical things that we have as executive directors is our responsibility to recruit our successors. And that actually 2008 that I started handling people energy. We call our HR process a people energy process, because people is one source, one resource which doesn't ever exhaust. It keeps on rejuvenating, recreating. So I was asked to see whether I can, and board asked me to see whether I can, take care of people energy process. And like Jira, I'm also chartered accountant. I handle business, I handle the supply chain and all that. But then I had never had handled people energy process or HR as a function. So I started from zero in that sense. But first of all, the first quality that we all require to be successful is being a good human being. Okay. So I started the process, looked at it afresh, and I realized that uh, all of us have responsibilities, including all my colleagues and managers, have responsibilities to look at requirements of people today and for next 2-3 years. So what we usually do, maybe as any other organization, is we go to the universities, the campuses, the institutes to select fresh talent to recruit people what is required today and for next 2-3 years. What we in Galaxy do is we do that consistently year after year, and we don't say that this year I'll really select X guys, the next year I will not select anybody. We used to go to the same institute year after year. And one of the beautiful things that has happened in Galaxy is maybe last about 20 odd years is that we have created our own project team. Okay, which our project team manages all our projects, the detailed engineering, the design, etc. And we engage outside specialists to do the civil construction, the electricals, the mechanical construction, etc. We don't do that ourselves. We have specialized agency doing that, but the designing, and then that requires quite a bit of engineers. So we ended up recruiting a lot of chemical engineers for this process, but they were schooled through the manufacturing. They went through the manufacturing, then they came into projects, or from project they went into manufacturing. So we have tremendous pool of engineers, which takes care of not only the today's requirement, but next 2 to 3 years requirement. Apart from this requirement, maybe for even chartered accountants or the cost accountants and the MBAs, we used to go to the Institute of Chartered Accountant, Cost Accountant, or the management schools to recruit people for our current requirement. At the same time, at the board, at the executive board level, it's our responsibility to find out beyond 3 years what are the gaps. Okay, and whether we have successor for each manager if something goes wrong. Okay, so this is the attention which the executive board takes, and we select people from that point of view. Most of the time, we try to see whether somebody within the organization fits in the particular role, or if there is a competency which we don't have, it is a new competency, then we see whether we need to take a fresh talent, or whether we need to take a person experience from outside into the organization. So our role is, when we take such person in the organization, is to first do the hand holding, bring that person into culture of the organization. And once you feel that this person is sort of molded into now, or remolded into our culture, and he is competent enough to handle the process, you step aside. That's what I did when I told you. When I had my successor to take care of HR, I said, if I am in the organization, he'll always come to me, or the board will come to me. So let me ensure that he proves his mettle by my being not available to him as a HR director or the people energy process director. So this is the job continuously of the, not only the middle level management, the top level management, but also of the executive board, to look at the succession as essential to building the organization. Today, that's why I'm saying what we have created over last at least 15-20 years is a tremendous pool of talent to manage maybe next 5 to 7 years time. If I look at afresh, maybe there will be some talent gaps available even today, which maybe the CEO and my executive board will be looking at, and they may be finding out, okay, how do we reach this gap. Does that answer your question?
It does, absolutely. I mean, a point well taken. Very lastly, Mr. Ramakrishnan, if I were to ask you on your 41st Foundation Day, that where do you want to see Galaxy 41 years from today? What's your vision?
Look, for me, I know that I can tell you that we will be a multi-billion-dollar company all over the world in many industries and all that. But then, what is it that it should be? It's that I would like to tell you. The values, core values on which the founding fathers have initiated the organization, which has been fostered, and the values which are being nurtured, cherished today. I would like to see. Of course, I'll be only 107. I'll be around. Okay, 41 years later, and then. I would love to see the same core values being the bricks and foundation of Galaxy. Even then, albeit it will be multiple exponentially playing in, say, different countries, volumes, value, etc. But then our core value on which we have built this organization should not change. That's what I would love to see when I'm 107.
That's a good thought coming from you, Mr. Ramakrishnan.
Hey, I can't hear her. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me, Mr. Ramakrishnan?
Yes, sir.
Now I can hear.
So I was saying that's a good thought coming from your end as well. Mr. Shanbhag, the same question, if it comes to you as well, what would your answer be, and what would your word of advice be to young entrepreneurs as well?
I think similar to what Jira says, though I won't say that I'll be there till 107. Okay. So obviously, one does not bother about how much big the organization will be after 41 years. What it is, what we all will be concerned about is the culture that we created, the values that we inculcated in the organization that continues. Certainly, I would like Galaxy to be an ethical organization and having tremendous potential for people to flower, and also where all are respected, irrespective of their position, the gender, religion, caste, whatever. Okay, so that's my expectation of Galaxy for all times to come, not just 41 years.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Ramakrishnan. Thank you, Mr. Shanbag, so much for joining us on the show to celebrate this 41st Foundation Day as well. In fact, now, after this, we will be joined by Mr. Natarajan Krishnan, who's the Executive Director.
Yeah. Hiral, before I hand over to Natarajan, let me personally apologize to people for the handicap. But then this is what an entrepreneur does: jugaad and faith that we will anyway make things happen and make things work. So I'm extremely sorry for the technical glitch, but I'm happy that finally it happened. And sorry for the delay in the program, start of the program. Thank you.
That's not an issue, Mr. Ramakrishnan. Thank you so much. And there is always new learnings that we get as well. Thank you so much. Stay safe, Mr. Shanbag and Mr. Ramakrishnan, and speak to you guys soon again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. We'll be joined by Mr. Natarajan Krishnan, who's the Executive Director, CEO, as well as Mr. Kasargod Ganesh Kamath, who's the Executive Director, Finance and CFO, to now discuss the business outlook going ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good evening to all of you.
Good evening.
And, sorry. Good evening.
Welcome, everyone.
And, yeah, once again, I think apologies for keeping people waiting.
Right.
We somehow managed, as Jira said, Jugaad, but we would not like this to happen. It's not the standards that Galaxy is used to, but then we'll find a way to ensure that doesn't happen again. Yeah, so business outlook for the going forward, the demand
Just you'll have to give me a second. I think we have participants.
They could hear my voice, but I could not hear
Rashi,
what they were talking.
or Ria, can you
I cannot hear.
get Mr. Ramakrishnan off the
this situation?
I think he's not been able to put his... Mr. Natarajan, will you be able to ask him to put himself on mute?
I'm trying him, he's on the phone.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just ask someone to get him off the panel list. I think that should do.
Ganesh, you're on mute, Ganesh. Ganesh, you're on mute.
See, as far as COVID is concerned, we are one of the fortunate industries where the demand destruction was not. Because we basically serve all those items which goes into the personal and home care, which is a day-to-day consumption item. Therefore, we are one such fortunate industry where demand destruction was. Second part is that, as you mentioned, we are spread out geographically in terms of manufacturing facilities, as well as in terms of markets. We can cater to 80 odd countries on a regular basis. Now, this spread of your manufacturing facilities and the markets basically mitigated disruptions in geographies during the COVID times. To that extent, it ensured that the concentration, geographical concentration, doesn't in any way disturb your business or disrupt your business substantially. The third aspect is that as far as the supply chain is concerned, since the disruption was there, it was all about sustaining the supply chain so that you have the highest uptime to run the business, which we did basically, which reflected in the results. Right? Going forward, what we see is that two macro trends emerging. One, since there has been a lot of natural calamities across the world, sustainability and safety have become two important macro trends which will drive the consumption in future. Right? Okay. As an organization, I think we have invested substantially in building capabilities in these two areas, both in terms of sustainability as well as in terms of safety, whether it be in terms of product or whether it be in terms of our manufacturing practices. Right? We have come out with our 10th sustainability report as well. Now, this, to that extent, these particular trends will enable us to leverage the competencies which have been.
Right. So with all of this, the kind of growth that we've seen in terms of FY21 as well, especially the specialty portfolio that has made a strong comeback in the second half of the year. Mr. Natarajan, is this something which is sustainable, number one? And what is the kind of revenues that we could see from this portfolio? Because if we have to look at FY21 as a year, overall, it's been slightly flattish for specialty.
Natarajan,
You're on
mute, you are mute, Natarajan.
Sorry. The specialty portfolio in the first half of the last financial year did get impacted because of COVID, because many of them are not operating, and then many projects in pipeline got a little bit delayed. But it made a strong comeback in the second half. Okay, and we do see that momentum getting sustained. The only headwind that I see, which can probably put a spoke in this momentum that it has gathered, is probably more COVID cases across the globe, and the third wave coming up with more lockdowns and creating more uncertainty. Otherwise, I do see this momentum continue.
Okay. And overall, what's the percentage of revenues that could come from specialty portfolio if you have to take the next 2 to 3 years into consideration, Mr. Natarajan?
So to answer this, specialty portfolio today is about 35% of our overall revenues. Okay. And our strategy is very clear. We want to grow both the legs of our business, which is the performance products and the specialty ingredients, grow both in the developed and the developing markets, and go across all categories of customers, be it global multinationals, regional, players, or the local players. Now, having said this, so what would happen is that we if you see the last 5 years, I've seen a huge amount of growth that we have had in terms of specialty care ingredients. But then you also had the performance products going up significantly in terms of growth. Because performance products, typically we serve the markets of India and Africa, Middle East, Turkey, where the demand is more on the mass products and mass products, whereas the specialty care ingredients are more into the developed markets of the US and the Europe. So what happens is that as we are growing our specialty care ingredients, portfolio significantly, we also are growing our performance products portfolio significantly across markets. So that essentially you find that the proportion between specialty and performance will be in this 60% of, say, specialty our performance products, and say 40% of special ingredients. It will be 70-30, 60-40, 65-35. But this will be in this zone. We don't see the whole thing tilting 60-70% in favor of special ingredients, because that is not how the HPC market is structured.
Okay. And overall, Mr. Natarajan, in terms of geographies as well, where are you seeing higher traction if you have to take all the 3 regions of India, Africa, Middle East, and Turkey, and rest of the world into consideration?
See, if we see what COVID did was that COVID changed the hygiene habits of people, it's changed irreversibly. So that actually resulted in more amount of the basic cleaning ingredients that people wanted. So be it hand wash, be it more amount of fabric wash, be it more amount of surface cleaners, floor cleaners, dish wash liquids. So that actually, essentially is what is driven by the performance product. And India and Africa, Middle East, Turkey were essentially the regions in which we grow, countries in which we grow significantly well. Okay, so we do see this momentum continuing because the hygiene habits of people have got changed irreversibly. We do see people using more frequently the cleaning products. More people who were earlier not using these cleaning products have now got pulled into, probably got into the situation where they have now started using it. So this holds well for the markets, the developing markets. So we see the performance ingredients demand keeping up this particular pace. Okay, the specialty care ingredients obviously will continue to be driven by our developed markets, that is US and Europe. Although we do see that in markets like India and in some of the other developing countries, that there is a preference by consumers, rural consumers, for real high-end formulations, and that is more promoted to the e-commerce channels. And the e-commerce channels typically are doing a pretty good job in terms of creating more and more new brands onto the platform. And we do see that as one of the other growth drivers, for specialty care ingredients, even in the developing markets like India and the African, Middle East, Turkey. So we're pretty excited about the sort of promise, okay, this industry holds for us.
Okay. And overall as well, when you talk about where the specialty portfolio goes as well, or even for that matter in terms of different geographies, how big an opportunity is the white label opportunity in India? Because again, in the international markets, our share of MNC is lower as compared to in India, led by more businesses from white label customers, which could probably be offering higher margins as well. So are you seeing that kind of trend catch up in India?
Yeah, white label is something that probably would get more driven by the, the organized retail, where you have more of the Reliance retails, more of the Future and Big Bazaar sort of outlets coming up. And we do see that what they require in the market is they have the infrastructure in terms of attracting a lot of customers and footfalls into their shops. But what they require is the ability to support them with formulations, okay, enable the supply chain for them in terms of quicker concept to market, and that's where we come to play. So we do see, because as the market now is growing, is poised to grow pretty well in India, okay, we do see the white label opportunity also getting bigger. So we do see the organized, we do see the global MNCs, the regional players who are in India. You will have the white label opportunity, and you'll also have the e-commerce channel that's going to be contributing to the sort of growth, significant growth that we see in these markets. So we need to get prepared, and then we need to be keeping our ears and eyes open and keep looking for these trends, emerging trends, and keep adjusting our strategy to ensure that we are able to leverage, okay, on whatever promise that this market holds for us.
Right. Mr. Ganesh, coming to you as well, with regards to where R&D goes, how big an expense is that going to be, taking into consideration the new product launches and the new segment launches that we have been planning? Will it stay at current levels, or do you think there will be an increase as a percentage of revenues?
I would like to put it in three parts. Right? One is the regular expenditure that we incur, right, on an ongoing basis, which is about 1 to 1.5% of our revenue, right? Okay. Then what happens is that we need to create infrastructural capabilities also in R&D. Right. So we keep investing in, we are currently expanding our R&D facility, right? And we are also investing in putting up a multi-purpose plant where we can basically commercially scale up the products. Right? That's the infrastructural part of the investment which is coming. Now, going forward, what we see is that with the sustainability trends taking prominence, right? New circular technologies coming into play, the R&D expenditure in terms of the new technologies which will have to address these particular things also will have to increase. This is the trend in which the R&D expenses will move.
Okay. And overall, Mr. Natarajan, overall with regards to new products and segment launches, what are we looking at?
No, we do see that the launches that we have done, we have launched 2 new products last year, okay, on one on the performance product side, one on the special ingredients side, what we call as a non-toxic preservative. Okay, we do see we are setting up capacities in our Jagadia plant to be able to service the market, and we also have some other products lined up, okay, in our innovation funnel. So we do see that the new products that we introduce over the next 2 to 3 years is going to be received well in the market. We already see some good traction, and there are a good amount of projects in pipeline. And we do only hope that the sort of demand robustness that exists today doesn't get in any way impacted by any issues of COVID. Otherwise, we do see that there can be traction.
Okay. And any new regions that we are looking to target in terms of expanding business?
We already into the Americas. We're looking at Latin, we're looking at the rest of the world includes Europe, US, Latin. Okay, and then we have Africa, Middle East, Turkey, and we have India and Asia Pacific. So we pretty much, so when we're almost supplying regularly to almost 80 countries, we pretty much in the entire world, and we pride ourselves as being global suppliers to global brands. Having said this, within these geographies, there are certain countries that we know that we need to deepen our presence, and then we have identified those countries in those geographies where we need to expand our presence in terms of hunting for more customers, and also farming, wherein we say that if I'm currently servicing a customer in that particular country, in that region with 2 or 3 products of us, how do we expand that basket to 5, 6, 7 products? So this is a two-pronged approach, hunting for more new customers in the geographies that we're already focusing on, and hunting for more farming for more new product, for more additional products that we want to cater to our customers who we're already serving, okay, in terms of expanding the product basket with that.
Okay. And with regards to where growth is concerned, Mr. Ganesh, what's the current capacity utilization that we have? And what is the expansion plan that we are looking at?
I think when we talk about growth, we need to understand one thing. We have multiple platforms of manufacturing. Okay. So our investment is not that you do a lump sum investment and thereafter you try to exploit the capacity over a boundary. For others, there is continuous investment which keeps happening in one platform on the other on a regular basis. Therefore, some capacities get fully utilized, some new capacities get released at any point of time. Therefore, generally, we see our capacity utilization ranging between 65 to 75%. Max, it goes up to 80%. This is basically the characteristic of the investment that we do from time to time, right? And that's why, because of this particular aspect, our internal accruals are generally adequate to meet the capex requirements, right? Not calling for any dilution of capital till now. Whatever investments we have done it from our internal accruals. Second thing is that our investments in terms of capex are generally it's about $15 to $20 million a year we keep investing. That's the range in which the investments happen in the various product lines where we identify that a particular threshold capacity has been reached in terms of utilization.
Okay. Okay. So going ahead, how are we planning to do the investments? Is it from internal accruals or will we be raising funds?
It will all depend on the investment opportunity, right? If you get really some good investment opportunities calling for larger funds, we may, as of date, you can say we are almost a zero debt. We always have the ability to raise funds for borrowing.
Right. Mr. Natarajan, apart from that, what's your outlook with regards to where fatty alcohol prices are concerned? Because they have been on an increase. Do you think that could impact our gross margins?
The fatty alcohol prices are obviously pretty much high, and then I do hope that they stabilize at these levels, because any sudden spikes or dips, okay, unsettles the market. So that does impact the demand pipeline. So the first concern we have is that because we don't know how the market will pan out, but then we want at least it to stabilize. And in a rising feedstock commodity price scenario, what is critical is the demand holds up. So if the demand holds up, okay, we don't see much of an issue, okay. But you have a situation where you have the commodity prices continuing to remain high, and the demand doesn't hold up. And the demand, may not hold up because either because COVID impacts everyone again, okay, or consumers do not have sufficient disposable income in their hands to be able to spend on these discretionary products. Then there can be an issue. But then we'll have to wait and watch. But we only hope that you don't have a situation where the commodity prices continue to remain high and demand starts getting impacted. We don't see that happening, but if there's an outside trend that happens, we will cross the bridge when it comes.
Right. So overall, in terms of FY22, what's the kind of growth that you're envisaging in terms of top line, bottom line, and margins?
See, our stated intent is to grow ahead of the market. So we've been growing at almost 8 to 10% volume growth over the last 10 years. And we're clear that we will continue to be growing at those levels, but for any, because only headwind that I see is the international logistics situation that continues to cause concern for all of us. It's worsening by the day. And, we need to have this situation quickly resolving. Okay, that's the only headwind that I see. Otherwise, I think with COVID situation not worsening, with international logistics improving, I think we can always look at a 6 to 8% growth rate. And as we have said, our profit growth has to be higher than our volume growth, and that's we have delivered so far. And we see no reason why that cannot pan out in the coming years.
Right. And very lastly, Mr. Natarajan, there's a question coming in from a viewer. How much of the current revenues are coming in from the EcoSafe products like Gal EcoSafe, and what will be the share in the future?
So GalEcoSafe is a product that we have launched, which is with an ultra low impurity. The impurity is called 1,4-dioxane, and that is something where US is moving into that in the coming months because of what we call as the New York law. It mandates that the end products need to have a specifically low amount of dioxane. So obviously it's been launched for that market. We are also looking at some other customers who are interested in this product. So we have recently launched it, okay, just a month back. And then we're seeing it other than US, it's already gaining traction. Outside of US, there's some customers who are inquiring about this product. So we do see that this can turn out to be a big opportunity, provided your customers looking at it equally well in terms of ensuring that they use products with ultra low impurities. Okay. And with regard to non-toxic preservatives, our ultra mild surfactants and our various new product introductions, we're only waiting for our projects that have already been delayed, which was supposed to be commissioned last year in Jayagadi and Tarapur. In last June, it got impacted because of the first wave, and then now it got impacted because of the second wave. We do expect them to be commissioned by end of this year. And yes, then we are well set in terms of catering to the sort of demand that we're seeing for these products. The market development efforts have gone ahead well, and we do look forward to servicing the demand that's coming on these products.
Right. All right, Mr. Krishnan, as well as Mr. Ganesh, thank you so much for speaking to us at Nirmal Bang. Always a pleasure to speak to you. Great insights. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you. Stay safe and speak to you soon again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.